all, welcome to another episode of Dadsplaining Politics. It's good we're still here, we're still coming back for more, and we hope you are too. Today we're going to talk about, a lot has happened in the world recently. Everyone is still reeling from the big change that happened in the US. So we're going to talk a bit about Ukraine starting. So the whole missiles that have been approved by the US, what do you have to think about that?
Well, first of all, both Freddie and I have a little bit of a cold today, so I apologise for our voicey.
Yeah,
I think Freddie gave it to me, so I don't know whether
we're going
that's
to
the
start
case, whether
pointing
she agrees
fingers
with that.
there, but
But yes, it's very interesting, the Ukraine. So Biden, in his last few months, has said Ukraine should use all the funding that they've been given and that they now have permission, supposedly, to fire long-range missiles into Russia, which could have some impact on the war, given it would allow them to hit air bases and bases where they have drones take off, etc., in Russia. Interestingly, a spokesperson for President-elect Trump has criticized the move as potentially, risking World War III, etc., and just as Russia has said the same thing. So what do you think of that, Freddie?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm so interested by that fact. It's predictable, of course. I think that that Biden has realized the reality of the situation, knows he only has a few months left to make a difference, is like, fuck, excuse my language, that he did not do more before, and now he's about to lose his power, terrified about what Trump could possibly do to worsen the situation, so he's throwing everything he can at the situation. And he was trying to withhold before to not escalate it, but I think he understands they need to show their force. Like we talked about in the prior episode, the US needs to show that they're not backing down and that they are the bigger power, and Russia needs to understand this. I also think that in the wake of the US allowing long-range missiles, other NATO members like France and the UK will do similar things. Like they'll also offer long-range missiles to Ukraine. So it's really a NATO stronghold against Russia, and we'll see how that goes. And obviously Russia is getting very scared considering they've been making all these claims it's going to start World War III.
But they've always made those claims. I think the play here is there'll come a point, and even Zelensky said the other day, actually Trump could hasten the end of the war. But there'll come a point they will draw a line where they are. So there's a great race over the next 2 months for the Russians to gain territory and for the Ukrainians to push them back, because wherever they're pushed back to potentially will be the new line. There's talk there'll be a buffer zone. Big question there is who would police the buffer zone? Would it be the US or NATO? And the other big question here is the remaining part of the Ukraine. Russia said it's not negotiable in terms of the remaining part joining NATO. So that will be fascinating, that whole negotiation between Trump and Putin in that regard, because
it definitely will be. With you saying it'll be interesting to see who polices that area, either the US or NATO. The way that it's going, with Trump being expected to lead the negotiations and being expected to herald this new agreement and state of peace between these two countries, I think that it would end up being the US. Maybe there could be some compromise that they come to where the US polices that area, and then that some of Ukraine does get to join NATO, whatever is left. Do you think that's a possibility, or is that a bit far-fetched?
I don't think Trump will want to do that. He might well say to the UK and France and Germany, you police it and you pay for it.
Yeah, because he wants to take them out of all foreign wars and not have any responsibility in other areas.
Yeah, which they could potentially do, but they may need to spend even more on defense than they've been doing before. So that's going to be fascinating. And pity help the people in Ukraine in the meantime, because Russia will be throwing everything at it to try and increase their territory.
Just thank God for Zelensky. I was thinking this the other day, how strong he is, and what a miracle it is that he's still going as the powerful leader that he was when this all started. I think it's been the 1,000th day of the war against Russia, and So it's just quite remarkable that they haven't sent some Russian sniper out to get him, and that he's still.
I know they've done a great job
going
protecting him, and it's great to see what an actor can turn into. Originally, he was an actor,
comedian
right? A
as well.
comedic actor, and he's been an incredible leader and incredible at galvanizing the world attention on Ukraine and getting support.
Because prior to everything that's happened in Ukraine, I think we all thought of Ukraine as somewhat relating to Russia, as in that Eastern European world. But Zelensky has provided this force, so we respect Ukraine for what it really is, like this whole independent state.
I didn't. I've been to Ukraine many years ago when I was working for Microsoft and had an altercation with the Ukrainian mafia. So that's for another story.
Yeah, that's for another time. He's lived many lives. That's fun. But yeah, we're also talking about how obviously Trump's appointment of ministers will have great effect on the war and, of course, on energy and the American energy policy. What do you have to say about that?
Well, clearly some of Trump's appointments are pretty astounding, including Kennedy and the energy leader, who's obviously a fossil fuel enthusiastic person. So it's going to be super interesting. They will obviously withdraw from Paris and drill, baby, drill, which is what they're going to do. And so, yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch. And but, Trump controls all levers of power in the US, so I'm sure he will get his way in terms of these appointments.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And his whole drill, baby, drill campaign slogan is quite, I mean, you don't forget it.
You don't forget it.
It really stays with you. So
and his promise is that will allow the US that has more oil reserves than anyone, that will bring down inflation because they will reduce energy prices dramatically.
Yeah,
that's the sort of supposed economic benefit of that.
And I mean, Chris Wright, who's the energy minister appointee, he has said, all he wants is to make people's lives easier by getting them better energy access. But then he's also a climate change skeptic and has outright denied its existence and happenstance. So that's interesting.
It is going to be really interesting whether Elon's head will explode at some point, because I mean, if you think about what he's done in terms of Tesla and SpaceX, he's been at the forefront of the renewable economy, and even SpaceX was driven by his concept that the planet's in danger and we better have a permanent settlement on Mars sooner rather than later. So it would just be interesting, this conflict of the two polar areas coming together.
I was also thinking about Elon the other day in terms of it'll be really interesting how he gets used to working in a government in a space where he doesn't have ultimate power. I mean, he's always been a private business owner who, when he says something, it happens. It gets done. I mean, he has enough money that anything he wants, he can make it happen. Now he's going to be in a position where, there's a lot less checks and balances than there were in the past, but there are still many. And there's still a lot of, democratic mechanisms that exist in the American government that will withhold him from doing exactly what he wants. And maybe he'll get to the point where he gets so frustrated by it all, he can't take it anymore. Do you think that's a possibility, that he gets
sick of the job? It's a possibility.
I
don't think it's a likely scenario, because he's been put in charge of Doge with Vivek, and their objective is to cut 25% of the federal government, which is supposedly going to save the US $2 trillion. So if he does that, there'll be far less checks and balances, right? Because those people who do the checks and balances will no longer be in power.
But it's a big if that he could even get to that point. I mean, it's rather a fantastic idea, isn't it? It's more science fiction than fiction. He's been watching a few too much stuff.
Well, no, I mean, he did a similar thing with Twitter, and people could disagree.
Twitter is not the same as the American government.
No, that's true. But he did the same thing, cut dramatically. Mind you, he impacted the business performance of Twitter as well pretty dramatically.
Yes. It was just an experiment for him. It didn't matter the uses of Twitter.
Anyway, like I said in the last podcast, Freddie, it's going to be super interesting. Disturbing at times, but super interesting.
Yeah. I think you're a bit too interested by it. I think that it's, I don't know, just an incredibly dangerous situation to be in. And yes, technically a fascinating thing to experience, but I don't need to hear any more of this man. I was so ready to have him out of my sight, out of mind. No more bloody Halloween costumes of people dressing up as Trump. I mean, that really got to a crazy peak over the past year. And now we might have that for another
You're going to be
3
having
years.
lots of that for many years to come.
Oh, God. And we also wanted to talk about COP as well, right?
Mhm.
That was held in Azerbaijan this year, which has been one of the most controversial takes from the entire conference. Just the fact that it was held in Azerbaijan, which is interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it, that they decide where these COPs are hosted. And the argument being, I suppose, if you do it in a fossil fuel rich country, it'll convince them to move down the path of renewables. But I think in this scenario, the president or the head of COP seems to be so in love with fossil fuels, it's kind of makes a
Head of COP.
mockery of the whole thing. The president of Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah. No, I know. It was funny. He opened the whole conference by saying, gas and oil are a gift from God. So that really says something about what he's trying to put across. Yeah, I don't think that should necessarily be accepted. I guess maybe they're trying to give these Eastern European countries like a chance to, I don't know, a chance to learn more about the environment and how it can impact them for the regular people, not for the government.
That's a positive approach to it. But I mean, it's interesting. I think Australia is vying to host COP at some point. So it's also an interesting thing. One of the world's biggest polluters and fossil fuel producers.
Yeah.
The question is, but more recently, Australia's done a better job around this than they would have done before. So the question is, do you want to encourage countries or do you want to be strict on it? At the moment, it seems like encouragement. And out of the COP, we were just reading the communique, and it was kind of pathetic, the communique, because it said they're going to continue working together and communicate. It was very blah, blah and nothing. But I think one of the interesting things that came out of it was the UK's new commitment for 2035. And they committed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 81%.
Which is
2035,
massive,
up from their 45% on their 2030 target.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's necessary, and the whole world needs to be doing far more than that, but I suppose they're still taking a big leap and they're really leading the charge. But it was a shame, did you hear as well, that the French representative refused to come to COP because of the fact that it was held in Azerbaijan, and they were using it to greenwash, their energy policies. So he didn't even go. So yes, the UK made a big leap, but there was so many other discussions that could have taken place that weren't able to because he wasn't there. So I find that quite interesting too.
Right. So turning to Australia now, this is a very interesting thing because, the Australian target is a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 43% by 2030. And of course, we spoke about last time, there's lots of chatter and talk about when the election will be held next year. And we were just looking at yesterday, I think I saw the question is, will the Labor Party set a 2035 target before the election, or will they just stick to their current 43% reduction by 2030? What do you think, Freddie?
I mean, no one thinks that they're about to set a target before the election. There's been a lot of dismissal of that idea, even on the news the other day when we were watching the Labour representative talk about it, and there were so many questions directed at him saying, when is it going to be released? And the explanation was, we can't come back with a climate reduction target until the Climate Authority has deemed it reasonable. And apparently the Climate Authority is redoing a lot of models.
Crunching the numbers.
They're crunching the numbers. They're getting a lot of specialists to come in. Since Trump won the US election, they have to reanalyze the entire climate model, and how it's going to affect the Australian economy, et cetera, et cetera. So apparently the Labor government is waiting for that. But I don't know, it all seems like a lot of excuses. Like,
well, no, it's great that they use the Climate Authority because
yeah,
that's the Matt Keane runs that. He used to be the Treasurer of New South Wales.
no, I respect the Climate Authority. I just think that we can make a commitment to something and accept that there are going to be like negatives in other areas. Like maybe it will there'll be a bigger deficit than there would be, or maybe it would take more money than it would have.
But darling, that's politically super dangerous, right? Because the coalition says they will repeal the 2030 target of 43% should they win government. So you see, it's really difficult for the Labor Party to become more ambitious than this because they could well lose the election and then even the 43% won't be happening.
Yeah.
So that's the political reality in the aftermath of the Trump election win because of the implications it can have on Australia.
And I don't know about you, but I feel really pessimistic at the moment about how our next election is going to go, whether it ends up being in March or April or whatever around that time. It's not feeling good for the Labor Party. Although I think for a time there, Albo's approval ratings are pretty high, and now they're not doing so well, are they?
Well, no, they're not doing so well, but they could always come back if there's an interest rate cut prior to the election by the Reserve Bank. That would be helpful if people start and feel the benefit of higher wages and a reducing rise in inflation.
Yeah,
that could be really impactful because I think that economy scenario was one of the big overriding factors in the US that people felt worse off. Now, there's still the whole issue of the cost of living in Australia and lack of housing. But even today, there's a whole debate about reducing immigration. On the one hand, the states are saying we actually need these students because the universities need these students to pay for the universities. And so the coalition is saying, oh, yes, we should have more students. The coalition is also saying we should reduce the overall numbers of immigrants. So students make up quite a high percentage of these immigrants. So the whole thing is a nonsensical debate, in my view.
I mean, it always ends up being nonsensical when you talk about immigration. I mean, the right wing just sort of views this idea of immigrants as these, these other beings, as, these like maybe ethnic minorities. They don't think of them as traditional, but American, maybe students from somewhere else, or British students coming into Australia. They don't think of it like that. Immigrants is a dirty word to a lot of Australians. And so they view them as this other who's going to come in and taint society, which is just disgusting and incorrect in every possible way. But
I mean, you know that universities are our second biggest industry in this country.
Yeah, I do.
But a lot of people don't even understand that, I think, because if they did, why would you cut off why would you kill the goose that lays the golden egg?
And I mean, it's the one thing we're really relying on at a point where like the fossil fuels industry and our commodities are going to become less and less important over time. Services is really our biggest industry at that point, is it not? So it's very
and
strange.
Hopefully renewable superpower, right?
Yeah,
we still
but not at the moment. That's a future.
Remember they're building that huge solar farm in the Northern Territory, then they're building the cable to Singapore. That'll be providing all the power for Singapore the next few years. That is an incredible opportunity for us. If you think about Indonesia and Singapore, if we could be providing their power cleanly, imagine the impact on the world.
That's true. And I suppose on a more positive note as well, when you listen to Biden talk about the clean energy revolution and how no matter what Trump does, you can't completely go back to what it was before because businesses have taken it in their stride. Yes. Investors have as well. And that's the same case for Australia, like exactly with this solar farm. You can't just get rid of all that. People want to make money.
The ball's rolling.
And they know that they're going to make money through renewables. So it's not going to be completely taken away anytime soon. But yeah, no, very interesting. That's about all we have for today. It's been lovely chatting with you all. As always, if you have any questions or comments, things you want us to talk about, please reach out and let us know. Anything you want to say?
And great chatting with you, Freddie. And we are going to expand this podcast onto providing an RSS feed. Thank you, Michael Stoddard, for that suggestion, and also to Apple Podcasts as well. And you'll see a few changes next week in what we're doing. Thank you so much. Have a great day.